Forgive me now, Emily, because tomorrow changes everything. The words tumbled from Adam Sterling's lips in a slurred whisper as the golden light from the city below spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Manhattan penthouse, catching the crystal chandelier and scattering it across the polished hardwood floors in fractured beams. Emily Collins, standing by the floor-length mirror in her sleek navy silk dress, paused mid-breath, her amber eyes reflecting the soft glow as the weight of the moment pressed against her chest. The apartment, usually a sanctuary of organized perfection and quiet luxury, felt alien, the usual hum of air conditioning and distant city traffic muffled by the tension that vibrated through the air. Outside, the streets glimmered with late-night neon, taxis streaking yellow light across wet asphalt, a reminder of the world beyond their gilded walls, indifferent to the drama unfolding above. Adam's usual composure, the ironclad poise of a man who commanded boardrooms and investment empires with a measured hand, was gone, replaced by a vulnerability so raw it made Emily's pulse quicken with both uncertainty and a strange sense of power. She could see the dark circles shadowing his storm-gray eyes, the tousled black hair that betrayed restless pacing, the suit jacket hanging loosely over his shoulders as though it were both armor and a shroud. The scent of his cologne, cedarwood and something faintly spicy, lingered in the air, and Emily breathed it in as she assessed the man she had once trusted completely, the man who had held her life and heart in balance, and who now knelt before her, as if confessing a silent truth she had yet to understand. Her mind raced back to earlier hours, to the whispers she had caught between colleagues, the subtle shift in his tone during dinners, the misplaced receipts, the quiet phone calls that had ended abruptly whenever she entered the room, all the fragments that had been building toward this crescendo. Yet here he was, at 3 a.m., pleading in his own unsteady way, each word weighed down by regret, and Emily felt the familiar fire of resolve ignite within her. She remembered the feeling of betrayal as sharply as a winter gust, the nights spent staring at empty hallways, the quiet heartbreak that had made her question not her worth but the solidity of the promises around her, her own poise and strength. She realized that power was not in the confession, but in how she chose to receive it. She stepped closer, the click of her heels against the polished floor echoing like a metronome marking the rhythm of her inner reckoning. Adam's voice, trembling yet measured, continued to spill out apologies and admissions, a litany of mistakes he could no longer undo. And Emily let the silence hang between them like a physical presence, letting him sit in the weight of what he had done, without a word from her. The city lights glimmered off the chrome accents of the penthouse, highlighting the luxurious sprawl of their life together. The grand piano in the corner, the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves meticulously arranged, the expensive artworks that had once symbolized shared taste, and now seemed like relics of a past she no longer inhabited. Emily's eyes softened not with forgiveness, but with clarity, seeing the man before her reduced to his essence, a human shaped by flaws and remorse, while she stood tall, grounded in the quiet certainty of her own integrity. The night stretched on, the hands of the clock inching past 3:30 a.m., and the air seemed to thrum with anticipation, as if the city itself paused to witness the moment of reckoning. Emily's reflection caught the shimmer of her silk dress again, the way the fabric hugged her form not as vanity, but as armor, a visual metaphor for the inner strength she had cultivated since the fractures had first appeared. She inhaled, measured, and stepped back slightly, letting the tension settle like dust in sunlight, aware that this was only the beginning of a journey that would redefine both their lives. A journey where every choice, every measured step, and every unspoken word would ripple into the days ahead, setting the stage for a confrontation with destiny that neither of them could yet fully imagine. The dynamics between her and Adam Sterling had shifted irrevocably, city below and the quiet power of her own heartbeat in response. Each step she took across the hardwood floors was precise, measured, a statement of composure and intention. She considered her next moves carefully, the possibilities and consequences intertwining, realizing that this was not merely a confrontation of the past, but the opportunity to define the future on her own terms. There was a quiet strength in the act of choosing her path deliberately, acknowledging the humanity of the man before her while asserting her own sovereignty over the life she would continue to build. Emily's gaze lingered on the skyline once more, the sun now fully lifting, casting long, confident shadows across the penthouse, and she felt a sense of readiness settle within her, a calm that spoke not of resignation, but of anticipation for the chapters yet unwritten and the quiet mastery of her own destiny. Emily Collins moved through the quiet penthouse with deliberate calm, her steps measured across the polished hardwood as sunlight gradually painted the walls in warm shades of gold and amber, the air filled with the soft scent of chamomile and fresh linen. Each item she passed, the meticulously stacked books on the coffee table, the sleek silver accents on the sideboard, the framed photographs capturing moments of shared success, served as reminders of a life she had once lived with precision and trust, now reframed by her growing awareness and resolve. She paused by the large bay window, looking down at the awakening city, where taxis and delivery trucks navigated streets slick from the previous night's light drizzle, their headlights scattering against the glassy asphalt, and she felt the rhythm of the metropolis mirror her own heartbeat, steady yet anticipating movement, change, and control regained. Her mind traced the past days, recalling the subtle hints that had led to last night's confrontation, the late calls that ended abruptly, the unseen correspondence, the glances exchanged behind closed doors, and she allowed herself a moment to honor the clarity that had emerged from uncertainty. A soft breeze drifted in through the open window, carrying the scent of morning coffee and freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery, a reminder that life beyond the penthouse waited, expansive and unjudging, offering Emily the choice to shape each moment deliberately. She reached for her laptop, the sleek device resting on the marble countertop, and began reviewing notes and financial summaries. Each line a symbol of her ability to reclaim authority and structure, to assert competence and independence in a world that often measured worth by appearances rather than resolve. As she moved from one document to the next, she reflected on the quiet power of observation, on the way small details, a folded note, a misplaced receipt, a shift in tone, could illuminate intentions and truths without confrontation. Emily's gaze returned to the city skyline, her amber eyes catching the glint of sunlight on distant skyscrapers, the windows like tiny mirrors reflecting fragments of other people's stories, other lives in motion, while her own narrative unfolded with deliberate intent. She considered the steps ahead, meetings with colleagues, strategic calls to partners, the careful navigation of professional and personal relationships that demanded both grace and precision. Her posture remained upright, her hands steady as she sipped from the ceramic mug of tea, appreciating the warmth that anchored her in the present while her mind charted paths forward. The penthouse, with its expansive open spaces, high ceilings, and curated artworks, felt less like a relic of past choices and more like a canvas upon which she could define her next chapter, a tangible backdrop to the unfolding narrative of self-possession and quiet authority. Emily allowed a brief smile to touch her lips, not of indulgence, but of recognition. Recognition of her own capacity to adapt, to rise above uncertainty, and to navigate the delicate interplay of power and vulnerability with measured composure. Reflect in the polished marble and cast delicate patterns across the countertop, her movements deliberate as she poured a second cup of chamomile tea, the warmth seeping into her hands and grounding her thoughts. The penthouse, with its minimalist yet luxurious decor, felt different in the daylight, the grandeur softened by the gentle radiance and the quiet hum of the city below, a reminder that life continued beyond the walls she now moved through with quiet authority. She ran her fingers across the smooth surface of the mahogany dining table, noting the way sunlight highlighted the grain, and considered the decisions that lay ahead, each one a measured step in a sequence that would determine the shape of her life moving forward. A throw there. The movements were small, almost ceremonial, yet each carried significance, a demonstration of intentionality and control that reflected her inner state. And the distant sounds of construction mingled with the low hum of early commuters, reminding her that the city operated on its own schedule, impartial and relentless, much like the unfolding narrative of her life. Over her life, the office remained orderly, the faint sound of distant traffic blending with the soft ticking of the clock, a rhythm that mirrored her own sense of measured timing and strategic awareness, reinforcing the understanding that while the past had shaped her, the present and future were hers to navigate with intentionality, foresight, and controlled confidence. Each choice she considered, each action she executed, was imbued with the consciousness that her decisions reflected not only competence but the reclamation of self, the assertion of autonomy, and the readiness to face whatever the day might bring, with the knowledge that she had the clarity, patience, and strength to navigate challenges with poise and efficacy. Emily Collins closed her laptop with deliberate care, the soft click resonating in the quiet of her office as she leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a brief moment to observe the city below and reflect on the deliberate choices that had brought her to this point. The streets were alive with morning energy, pedestrians moving with purpose, bicycles weaving between taxis, and the subtle hum of early deliveries creating a backdrop of activity that contrasted with the calm, controlled environment of her workspace. Sunlight streamed in through the expansive windows, glinting off the chrome accents of her desk lamp and the polished edges of her notebooks, illuminating the clean lines and careful organization that mirrored the clarity she now felt in her own thoughts. Of chamomile tea lingered, mingling with the subtle scent of fresh paper and a hint of leather from her chair, creating a sensory environment that was both comforting and grounding, reminding her that attention to detail in both surroundings and action could reinforce focus and resilience. She considered the journey that had led her here, the gradual accumulation of insight, the deliberate attention to subtle signs, and the cultivation of patience and discernment that had allowed her to navigate complexity without haste, and she recognized the power inherent in measured, intentional response. Moving back to her desk, she adjusted the arrangement of her documents, aligning pages and folders with meticulous precision, each movement deliberate, each gesture reinforcing the order she had established both externally and internally. The soft light of the morning emphasized the textures of the penthouse, the smooth marble, the polished wood, the reflective surfaces catching the sun in patterns that shifted as the hours advanced, and Emily absorbed the scene with a quiet attentiveness, letting the visual rhythm anchor her thoughts and intentions. Outside, the city buzzed with activity, yet inside the apartment a calm clarity prevailed, the structured environment providing a stage for reflection, preparation, and the careful planning of steps that would carry her forward with poise and authority. Attention shifted to the array of documents and notes laid across the mahogany desk, organized with precision, each representing decisions to be made, opportunities to be evaluated, and strategies to be implemented, all signaling the deliberate reclamation of her autonomy and authority in both personal and professional spheres. Emily lifted her gaze to the skyline once more, taking in the interplay of sunlight and shadows on the skyscrapers, the distant bridges, and the subtle glint of vehicles moving along the avenues, a visual representation of momentum, direction, and the flow of time, and she felt a steady pulse of anticipation for the calculated steps she would take in the hours to come. Artwork provided a serene backdrop, the subtle interplay of light and shadow enhancing the sense of calm authority Emily maintained. She allowed herself a moment to pause by the windows, letting the cityscape sink in, the sounds of distant traffic and faint conversations in the streets blending into a rhythm that mirrored the pulse of her own thoughts, steady and deliberate. The faint scent of polished wood mingled with her tea and the subtle aroma of the linen furnishings, creating an environment that encouraged reflection, focus, and deliberate intent.